Now I want to spend a little time talking about what an argument looks like in written form. So, in written form, this could be a book that you read, a journal article, a magazine article, a newspaper article. It could be anything that you read in class. It could be in spoken form. It could be something you hear on the news or in a debate. But what I want to talk about now is in writing. So, if you're taking an English class, if you're taking a philosophy class, any class where they might have you write, for example, a research paper, a well done research paper will in fact be making an argument. All right. So a research paper in school, your academic research papers, they're gonna be a well structured argument. That's the intent. I've written dozens of research papers in all the years that I was in school. So if anybody has ever read any of my papers, you might not think they're the greatest, but one thing you can't disagree with is I know exactly how it's supposed to be structured. And so I'm going to talk to you about how a good research paper is structured. And understanding how a good research paper is structured is basically the same way you would understand how any good argument is structured. So in a good research paper, in a good argument, here's one thing that you should find right off the top. You might not find this in all research papers, books. This might not always happen when you are listening to a debate or the news, but one very important thing that should happen, the first thing a person should do is try to relate to the audience. This is sometimes referred to as common ground. Whatever it is you're discussing, right? Whether it's zoology, meteorology, truck driving, accounting, whatever it is, if you're trying to explain something or make a point, then the first thing you ought to do is try to reach some sort of common ground between you and the person listening or reading. So common ground is anything that will bridge the gap between the audience and the thing you're trying to prove. So, for example, if I'm giving a course on philosophy to people serving time in prison and people in prison don't understand why philosophy is important, one of the things that I will do is discuss justice. Because when it comes to my audience, people in prison, and what I want to discuss, the value of philosophy, one of the things that is in between us that we can both agree on, that we both understand, is an understanding of justice. Many people will have an opinion as to whether or not their conviction was just or fair, or whether their sentence was just or fair. And so people who think that philosophy is, just some people sitting around tables talking about things that don't have anything to do with the real world, they will listen up when you talk about justice, especially like criminal justice. So if I'm trying to express to someone the value of philosophy, one of the things I'll do is try to establish some common ground between myself and them by discussing the role of justice. This common ground is important because then it not only gets your audience to listen, but at least it bridges this gap between you and them so that you both are sort of starting off on the same foot or the same page. You both are understanding something that is important together. All right, so the first part of a good argument is common ground. This is where you, the author of a book or whatever, is trying to find some similarities. Somehow they want to try and relate to the person reading it, which is their audience. Now, the second part is probably the most important part, and it might be a little bit confusing because of the terms. So this is why I said sometimes you will hear different terms, different words used to refer to the same thing. And you're just going to have to get used to it. That's just how it is. You're not going to move up in levels of education and everybody's using the same words, the same terms to refer to stuff. They use different words. All right. So here, think with me like this. If you are going to write an essay for an English class, if you've ever taken any English classes, whether that's in high school or college, even if you only got your GED while in prison, you probably encountered an English teacher who wanted you to write an essay. A regular essay will have three basic parts. It will have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. All right, this is basic junior high, high school English classes. Again, even if you only got your GED, if you've ever had to write an essay, they'll say it should have three basic parts: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Now, visualize that for a second. On a sheet of paper, if let's say you only had to write a one-page essay, they would say the introduction comes first. Obviously, it's called the intro. Then there would be the body of the essay, and then you would draw a conclusion. So the conclusion in the flow of an essay is last, right? Well, the thing is, remember I said that the conclusion can also be referred to as the main claim, the main idea. It can be referred to as the thesis or a judgment. It can have a variety of terms. It can have a variety of words that are used. So if you're writing an essay or something like that, the conclusion is at the end. But in a well-written paper, like a persuasive paper or an argument that you might find in the newspaper or a magazine article or a book or anything like that, they're actually going to state the conclusion right up in the introduction. And this kind of confuses people, okay? So just the way I'm trying to explain it is, if you visualize a basic essay, it starts off at the top with an introduction, then you have the body of the essay, and then you have a conclusion. But in a well-written, persuasive paper, for example, most of the times the conclusion, the big idea that they want you to believe or prove, is actually stated in the introduction. And so in a good introductory argument, they will say something relating to the audience, that's common ground, and then they will state the main claim or the thesis, the thing that they're about to write about, the thing they're about to try and prove to you, the thing they're about to try and persuade you to believe. They're going to state that up front. And then the body is going to be all of their reasons and evidence, all of the reasons they have for believing something, all the evidence they have to support it, and then they'll draw a conclusion. And the conclusion will simply restate the introductory main claim. It'll just say it again in different words. All right, this is really crucial. All right, I started off the conversation saying we are talking about good arguments in all their different parts. The first part of a good argument is something called common ground. It's a way that you relate to your audience. And the second part, what I'm saying, is really like the key, the most important part. And this is your main claim, also sometimes called your conclusion. But the reason it confuses people is because when people think conclusion, they think of what's at the end of something. And that's legit. But I'm telling you that the conclusion can also be stated right up front in the introduction. Because in a good research paper or essay, the person says, here's what I believe, here's my conclusion. Now here's all the evidence and reasons I have. Therefore, you see why I've drawn such and such conclusion. Now, it still might be confusing you. That's fine. As we talk more and more about it, you'll get it. A lot of times what I've encountered is that people think they can't understand something, or they're just not cut out for school or academics if they don't understand it the first time. But that's crazy, because it's just normal that many people don't understand something the first time around. You just have to stick it out. And then as you go and you hear more examples, things will start to fall into place, and then that light bulb will come on. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, that's fine. Just keep listening. All right, so the main claim, or if you want to call it the conclusion, that's going to be like the most important part of the whole argument, because that is the thing that you're trying to prove, or the thing that you are trying to get people to believe. And remember, I go back and forth talking about what you are trying to get people to believe, and then what others are trying to get you to believe. It doesn't matter if you're the one speaking or writing, or you're reading it, right? Arguments go both ways. The thing people are trying to get you to believe, and the thing you try to get others to believe, is called the main claim, main idea. In an academic paper in school, it might be called the thesis, and it also might be referred to as the conclusion. Just don't get mixed up. When we hear conclusion, we sometimes think a conclusion is always at the end. If you're writing a paper, the last section of your paper is called the conclusion, but the big idea can be stated at the top. Now, as if that wasn't confusing enough, the third part to a good argument has to be all the evidence and reasons used to support it. These can be called premises, So remember I mentioned that earlier. I said the two basic parts of an argument is premises and conclusion. So the premises can also be called claims with a little c. The second part of the argument I talked about was a main claim. This third part I'm just calling claim with a little c, because there can be a bunch of them. The premises, the claims, they constitute all of the reasons and evidence. So if you're visualizing that essay again, you've got the introduction, you've got the body, and then the conclusion. It's the body of the essay, that's where you put all of your premises or claims. This is where you put all of your reasons or evidence. So this is another one of those tricky things. When I use the word claims, C-L-A-I-M-S, with a little c, I can also say premises, my premise 1, premise 2, premise 3. I could also say claim 1, claim 2, claim 3. And these claims, these premises, are an explanation of the evidence that I have to support my conclusion or the reasons that I have to support my conclusion. The basic definition of a claim is just anything that asserts something is true or false and in need of support. Any statement that you make or that someone else makes that asserts something is true or false and is in need of support. That's a basic premise, that's a basic claim.